based on a 1936 novel by Graham Greene, who I would say is probably one of the most significant novelists of the 20th century. And his thing was he himself made this distinction when he wrote his novels between his literary works and his entertainments. In fact, A Gun for Sale carries the subtitle, an entertainment, under the title. It's not a particularly entertaining book, I have to tell you. It's a great book, but as David and I were just discussing, I read this book many, many years ago, and I honestly didn't really understand it, what it's actually about. And it's very different than, the novel is very different than what the movie is, in the sense that the novel is about a country preparing for war. That is what it's about. And the fact that war can happen at any time. It's in the air. And he creates this plot involving a hired killer who is paid to commit a killing that essentially is going to guarantee that England goes to war. He is unaware of this when he commits the killing, of the significance of what he's actually done. And that's what the book is actually about. And then the pursuit of the killer trying to get the people who set him up while the police are trying to track down the killer. It is a very, very faithful adaptation of the book, the movie, except it's set in California. And it does not have any of that tone that Graham Greene is talking about. Like, you do not get the sense that war is imminent when you're watching this movie, even though we were at war when they made this movie. It's like, no. I mean, Hollywood had a way of, this is an entertainment, we're not going to address the serious issues in this movie. It sneaks in very interesting ways in the film that you'll see. We can talk about that later if you wish. It's interesting that this adaptation was done by, there are a couple of people involved in this who would be blacklisted. Albert Maltz, the screenwriter, and Frank Tuttle, the director of the film, were both blacklisted for being communists. It's interesting that Frank Tuttle specifically became a member of the Communist Party in the late 1930s as a reaction to Hitler's rise in Europe. Again, it's so funny, when I do this stuff on TCM, this is one of the things I get an overwhelmingly positive response, but I do get a lot of kickback from people who don't want me to talk about the blacklist. Why are you bringing up that old subject again? And I said, are you reading the newspaper today? And also when I talk about gay stuff on the air, because people don't think that people were gay until about 20 years ago. So whatever. The success of this movie is really due to Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake. And the legend of this is, of course, when you hold up that poster, you can see that duly noted that Robert Preston is the ostensible star of this movie, but he makes virtually no impression in this film because Alan Ladd makes such an incredibly strong impression. And this was his breakout role. He had been just a bit player in movies, and I love the story that his agent, Sue Carroll, who would quickly become his wife, and she really was the power behind Alan Ladd, who was a very, very insecure man who did not really believe he was a good actor. He didn't like acting, but she said, you know, you have something in front of the camera. And when he tested for this role, right, he's the bad guy, but they figured the bad guy has to have black hair. So they were dyeing his hair black to play this character. But when they saw him do the test with Veronica Lake, they said, no, he's going to stay blonde. Because they actually seem to be a mirror image of each other. They have this male-female yin-yang thing together on screen that was a huge part of their chemistry, as we were joking before. You know, they were very small. Veronica Lake was barely 5 feet tall. I mean, in her stocking feet, I think she was 4'11" or something. I mean, she was tiny. And he was not much taller. And are you aware of this?
He's 5'4".
5'4", I think. Yeah. Do you guys know that like actors, classic Hollywood actors, except for like Mitchum and Robert Ryan and Sterling Hayden, are all really small? I mean, it's weird. I mean, like small body, big head. That was the thing, you know. I mean, it worked. Humphrey Bogart and George Raft and Edward G. Robinson and Jimmy Cagney and all these, they're small, and the actresses are just as small. Although Veronica Lake was really small. And interesting little side note, talks about costume design. Edith Head does the costumes for this movie, right? One of the Hollywood legends. And she had a very interesting way of dealing with Veronica Lake's body that you'll see in this film, because she is so small, they have to do something to sort of elongate her. So we won't go into it now, but you'll be aware of this when you watch and see. And man, she designed some wacky costumes for her in this film, because she does play. And you know, I'd be honest with you, when I saw this movie, I thought that the Veronica Lake stuff was added into the film to Americanize and Hollywoodize the movie. But in the novel, she is an entertainer. And I mean, she is in a show doing musical numbers and things. It is just like in the book. I don't know that she did this crazy fishing number that she has in this, in like the dominatrix outfit that Edith Head designs for. So it's pretty nuts. But and also the movie is photographed by John Seitz, who would become sort of a legend in noir when he photographed Double Indemnity for Billy Wilder about a year and a half after this movie. Anyway, okay, that's enough of me gassing first. Let's watch the movie, and then we can talk about all of this stuff. I hope you have questions. And yeah, this is the last thing I want to say is I have recently been showing this film because I've been doing in my series, my Noir City series, I've been showing films chronologically to give people a sense of how the whole noir movement developed in Hollywood. And this is one of the first, I Wake Up Screaming, which you have shown here, certainly one of the first that really looked like a noir and had a whole noir structure and style to it. And this Gun for Hire is a really, really important part of that, because, as you noted, the villain becomes I'm not going to say the hero of the story, but he becomes the character that the audience most identifies with, which is a huge thing in film noir. You are asked to identify with people who are doing the wrong thing, and you know they're doing the wrong thing, and God damn it, you can't help it. You still kind of empathize with them, you know. So that Alan Ladd made this a very romantic character, without compromising in any way the fact that he is kind of an ice-cold killer in this movie, was extremely significant for Hollywood and helped set the stage for this movement where people were identifying with all these people doing the wrong thing. The major change from the book, and this is where Hollywood will stick to the plot of this book, but the one thing they could not do is that Philip Raven in the book has a hair lip. And it is a huge part of the character that he is deformed and is repulsive to people, and that makes him the way he is. If you think they're going to put a hair lip on Alan Ladd, guess again. So they give him a deformed wrist. Believe me, it is not the same thing. So here we go. Let's watch it. This guy.